For God's sake, catch me before I kill more. I can't control myself. A note written in lipstick on the wall of Frances Brown's living room. This note belonged to the lipstick killer, sensationalized by the Chicago press. The adventure that began with this note was to be very difficult. When the lifeless body of Josephine Ross, a housewife and widow, was found in her apartment on North Kenmore Street on the afternoon of June 5, 1945, it was the final days of World War II. 43-year-old Josephine had been a widow since July of the previous year and, according to local accounts, had dreamed of opening a restaurant with the life insurance proceeds from her late husband's death. Her body was posed on a bed, her head wrapped in a skirt. She had been stabbed several times, including in the throat, and before her body was washed, the stab wounds were covered with tape, her head was covered with a skirt, and then her body was posed. Although the killer had washed the body, investigators were able to find strands of black hair in Josie's hand. Nothing was taken from the home. According to the police, the killer had entered the apartment, met Josephine, and killed her. Based on the strands of dark hair found in her hand, the killer was believed to be a dark-skinned man. Several of Josie's former boyfriends were questioned, and all had alibis. Despite the horror of the murder, the case received little media attention. The case of Josephine Ross was still open. When Frances Brown was found dead in her North Pine Grove apartment on December 10, 1945, there were no clues. The door to her apartment had been left open. A cleaning woman had noticed the radio playing loudly. She entered and found 32-year-old Frances naked and slumped over the bathtub. In addition to the gunshot wound to her head, there was a large knife in her neck. Like Josephine Ross, her body had been washed and her head wrapped after her death. Again, nothing was taken from the apartment, but the police thought the same thing. The killer had come home from a robbery, and when he saw Frances, he killed her. Unlike Ross's crime scene, this time the killer had left a message. The killer had written a cryptic note on the living room wall in Frances Brown's red lipstick. For God's sake, catch me before I kill more. I can't control myself. It was this note that led the press to dub the unidentified killer the Lipstick Killer, a name that resonated far and wide. The unknown killer also left a bloody fingerprint smudge on the door jamb of the apartment and 2 witnesses. George Weinberg heard gunshots around 4 a.m., and John Derrick, the building's night superintendent, noticed a nervous man get off the elevator and walk to the street. Derrick described the man as about 140 pounds and 35 to 40 years old. Strangely enough, the Chicago police investigated Brown's murder for several days on the theory that the killer was a woman. In January 1946, the killer had returned to his Kenmore Street hunting grounds. At 7:30 a.m. on January 7th, James Degnan noticed that his 6-year-old daughter, Suzanne, was not in her bedroom and called the police. Finding a ladder outside her bedroom window, police searched her room and found a crumpled, crudely written ransom note demanding $20,000 with instructions not to contact the police or the FBI and to wait for word from the kidnapper. 9 hours passed, during which time several more ransom notes arrived at the Degnan home. Then came another anonymous letter asking authorities to check the sewers. Suzanne's severed head was found floating in a sewer a block away with blue ribbons in her hair. Over the next few hours, both of Suzanne's legs and torso were found in separate sewers nearby. Her arms were found a month later in a sewer 3 blocks from the Degnan home. The manholes were cast iron and weighed more than 100 kilograms each. No eyewitness had ever seen them removed or reattached. The killer had done it quickly, without anyone seeing it. A search of the neighborhood revealed a laundry room in the basement of an apartment building very close to where Suzanne's head was found. In this laundry room, evidence was found in 4 tubs that Suzanne's body had been dismembered there. The floors had been mopped, but blood was found in the drains of all 4 tubs. Suzanne's autopsy showed that the time of death was between midnight and 1 a.m., and that she had suffocated. This led authorities to believe that Suzanne had been taken alive from her home and strangled at a second location before being taken to the laundromat. No arrests were made for 6 months, and on June 26, 1946, no answers were found for the anxious residents of Chicago. With no answers, the public began to lose sleep. William Heirens was born in 1928 to Luxembourgish immigrants who ran flower shops until the Great Depression disrupted their business. A young son, Gerard, soon joined the family, which was quickly torn apart by tensions. Although his father managed to find work as a security guard, he spent most of his free time drinking, forcing Heirens' mother to supplement the family's income by working various jobs. Heirens worked from an early age. He first worked with his father in flower shops, in a local grocery store, as an electrician's helper in a steel mill, and as an usher in an orchestra. Heirens was an above-average and creative student. He was described as having a tendency to daydream. His first arrest came shortly before graduation when he was caught shoplifting. A large cache of stolen goods was found near his home. As a result, Heirens was sent to a reform school for boys in Terre Haute, Indiana. He was allowed to return home at the end of the school year, but before the summer was over, he was arrested again for theft. This second arrest sent him to St. Bede's Academy in Peru, Illinois, where he excelled in his studies, joined the school wrestling team, and worked in the library. Shortly after beginning his senior year at Bede, he was accepted to the University of Chicago, where he began studying electrical engineering. He quickly adapted to the social life of the university and soon had a girlfriend. Although he told himself he would never rob anyone again, the financial pressures of school and dating soon brought him back to his old tricks. On June 26, 1946, 17-year-old Heirens had a date with his girlfriend for the evening, but was short on cash. He had planned to cash in a savings account, but when he arrived and found the post office closed, his plan fell through. Plan B was to revert to his old habit of burglarizing. His previous method was to check apartment doors and then rob those that were unlocked. He found an unlocked door at the Wayne Manor Apartments, home of the Pera family. When he was discovered, he stole $1 and ran away with police officers in pursuit. He later claimed that the officers shot at him first. The officers claimed that Heirens fired the first shots. Heirens carried a gun in the back of his jeans, supposedly to protect himself from potential muggers. As he ran from the cops, he was luckily caught by an off-duty officer in a bathing suit. Heirens was taken to the hospital ward of the Cook County Jail. He received stitches in his head and was subjected to a long and painful interrogation. During this time, he was in and out of consciousness. Detectives somehow thought this man might be the lipstick killer. So fingerprints were taken to compare with those found on the previous ransom note. It was found that there were 9 exact matches. But William confessed nothing. From now on, the cops would have to resort to some nasty methods. A nurse was called in to pour ether on his genitals while Heirens was tied up. When this failed to elicit a confession, a police officer punched Heirens repeatedly in the stomach and told him details of the kidnapping and murder of Suzanne Degnan. He believed this would trigger Heirens' memory. When that didn't work, Heirens was given a spinal injection without anesthesia. It was a very painful procedure. After the spinal fluid was removed, a polygraph was ordered, but because Heirens was in so much pain, the machine would not give an accurate reading. His room at the university was searched, as well as his parents' house and a locker he kept at the train station. Evidence of Heirens' years-long burglary hobby was found, but nothing to link him to the murders. Heirens' parents had hired a lawyer to represent their son. They were denied access to him for 6 days. They were not able to speak with him until July 2nd. In the meantime, authorities told the media that they had captured the lipstick killer and named him Heirens. During the 4 days of interrogation, Heirens was injected with sodium pentothal, also known as truth serum. The injection made him delirious. William writhed in pain. For 4 days he was tortured in various ways. Finally, somewhere between closed and open consciousness, he spoke of a man named George, who might have committed the murders. Since George was Heirens' own middle name, the police believed that this was Heirens' way of confessing. On July 12, 1946, 17 days after his arrest, William Heirens was indicted on 23 counts of burglary, robbery, assault with intent to kill, and 3 counts of murder. Meanwhile, serious discussions were going on in the background. Perhaps the people of Chicago were relieved that the killer had been caught, but there was more to it. William Heirens was denied access to an attorney after his arrest. He had been tortured for 4 days and had called out the name George. Also, the fingerprints found matched 9 spots. 12 points had to be matched to get a definitive result. Although Heirens had not fully confessed, Chicago Tribune reporter George Wright fabricated a full confession to sell newspapers. Other newspapers picked up Wright's article and not only printed his fabrication, but began writing their own stories. All the newspapers demanded that Heirens be executed for his crimes. William made a deal with the district attorney to serve 3 consecutive life sentences in exchange for pleading guilty to all 3 murder charges. He pleaded guilty in court on September 4, 1946. Although he was given the opportunity to take the stand, he refused. The next day, he was sentenced to 3 life terms, plus 1 life term for theft, assault, and robbery. That night, he tried to hang himself in his cell. He was revived by the prison doctor. Heirens continued to deny his guilt in the murders. During the first few years of his incarceration, Heirens suffered from depression and wanted to be out of the public eye. He was held in the psychiatric ward at Menard Correctional Center. In 1951, he was transferred to Stateville Prison, where he would remain for the next 24 years. Heirens spent his first 5 years at Stateville learning radio and television repair at the vocational school and teaching the trade to other inmates. For 10 years, he worked as an office manager in the prison clothing industry. For 5 years, he was secretary to the Stateville School Program Director. He served as a math and English tutor when needed and helped fellow inmates earn their GEDs. Transferred in 1970, Heirens worked in the radio and television shop for 5 years, maintaining radios and televisions for the institution and staff. In 1975, he was transferred to the Vienna Correctional Center, a minimum security facility, and enrolled in the Emergency Medical Technician program. He completed the program and worked briefly in the prison ambulance service. For 7 years, he worked in the prison library, maintaining the law library and helping fellow inmates with their legal problems. Heirens qualified for the day release program and worked in a nearby orchard. She also worked as a secretary to the prison chaplain, a position she held until she left for Dixon Correctional Center in 1998. She had taken a computer class just before leaving for Dixon. In addition to his busy work schedule, Heirens founded the 7 Steps program, a personal development organization for inmates. He also helped establish a 3-day religious retreat in Vienna. When Heirens was first incarcerated in 1946, the prison did not offer college-level courses, so he took correspondence courses at various universities at his own expense. When he graduated from Lewis University in 1972 with a liberal arts degree, he became the first inmate in Illinois to earn a college degree. He continued to work after graduation. While in prison, Heirens also developed an interest in art, specializing in watercolor painting and calligraphy. His paintings won ribbons at art shows. In later years, Heirens suffered from diabetes, which affected his eyesight and caused his legs to swell, requiring him to use a wheelchair. William Heirens died at the University of Illinois Medical Center on March 5, 2012, at the age of 83, having served his sentence. He made history as Chicago's longest-serving prisoner. In a 2008 interview, he said he would have pleaded guilty to the death penalty. Had he not made a deal with the prosecution, he would have gone straight to the electric chair. William felt that if he survived, he could at least make his case. He never committed a crime while in prison. He was always an industrious prisoner. So, given his behavior and the attitude of the police, do you think William was guilty or not guilty?